Howdy folks, Spencer here, and today I want to talk to you about the Protostar Temporal Science Spearhead that was just announced on the 10 Forward stream earlier tonight. As always, chapters are listed down below for those of you that want to skip ahead to any specific topic. The first thing I want to talk about is the when and how you can get your hands on a Protostar. So the Protostar is going to be the grand prize from the new Prodigy lockbox, which is launching alongside the new Incursion season, which is launching on PC September 12th and console November 1st, 2023. Now, this is the grand prize from this new lockbox, and for those of you not familiar with the drop rate system for lockboxes in Star Trek Online, I would highly recommend you check out my video going over the drop rates of lockbox ships. The system as is not user friendly at all, and if you do decide to gamble to try and get the Protostar via opening this new Prodigy lockbox, make sure you're opening on the same character and make sure you understand what you're getting yourself into. The way that this system works with lockboxes in Star Trek Online means that you could get the ship in the first 10 keys and spend less than $10 on it, or you could get very unlucky and not get it for, $400 or $500 worth of master keys. So just keep that in mind before you go through and gamble, and make sure to check that video out so that you are fully informed on what the lockbox and pity systems are like before you go through and spend a ton of money on it. My recommendation instead would be to go through and buy master keys, but don't use them. Instead, sell them on the player exchange, and then use the EC from those master keys to go through and just directly pick up a Protostar with energy credits. That is going to for sure get you the ship at a max of about 100 to 150 bucks, whereas gambling could mean you are legitimately spending 500 bucks and not getting the ship. So I would recommend you play it smart and don't gamble. Just buy it off the exchange if you really do want it. Now, if you don't want to gamble and you don't want to put money in for it, it will be available as an option from the event campaign 6 that starts in 2024. So the currently running event campaign 5 will not have it as an option. I know that question often pops up when these ships are announced, but it will not be an option from the event campaign this year, but it will be an option from the future event campaigns like event campaign 6 in 2024. So there is going to be a free route to get the Protostar. You're just going to have to wait potentially a year to be able to go through and get it for free. Now, the other thing I want to mention is that there is going to be a bit of controversy with this ship being a lockbox ship. I'm not going to fully dive into that conversation here today, but I just want to give a quick rundown as to why people are mad about this. And the main reason is that the Protostar is the main hero ship from Star Trek Prodigy. And for those of you not familiar with Prodigy, it is a Star Trek series that was designed to target younger audiences. This is a kid show that was on Nickelodeon, and they took the hero ship from that and put it into a lockbox in this game with a lockbox system that is extremely predatory. So that is why you're seeing the blowback that you're seeing, and I imagine others are going to be talking about that in a bit more detail, but it is a bit of a shady thing in my opinion. But this is the common trend for Cryptic to put these hero ships either in a lockbox or a promotional pack. With that out of the way, let's head on over to the stats. And starting off with the ship side of things here, this is a Temporal Science Spearhead, which means it has a 4-3 weapon setup, and it can equip cannons, so dual heavy cannons or dual cannons if you want. It is still a science ship, so it does retain a secondary deflector. It has 3 device slots. For its consoles, it has 4 engineering, 5 science, and 2 tactical. Heading over to the bridge officer side of things here, we have a commander science with temporal operative, a lieutenant commander engineer with miracle worker, a lieutenant commander tac, a lieutenant universal, and an ensign science. Now, I'll tell you right now that a lot of the science players that have been looking at this have pretty much responded with it's a disappointment. And the reason for that is that a lot of people that really focus on the science stuff don't like having a ton of forced non-psi seating on a ship, and this ship has a lot of forced non-psi seating. You've got a forced lieutenant commander tac, and you have a forced lieutenant commander engineer with Miracle Worker. And the issue with that Miracle Worker also is that Miracle Worker doesn't really have much to offer on science builds like this. Miracle Worker is typically better used for boosting an energy weapon build, but on a science build, it just doesn't really bring much to the table. Now, a way that this bridge officer setup could be improved is by swapping the Miracle Worker and Temporal around. While Miracle Worker doesn't really have anything to offer in a Lieutenant Commander slot, if it was a Commander Miracle Worker, that would give you an extra console slot, which is basically the only thing of value that Miracle Worker brings to most builds nowadays. And if the specs were swapped, then that Lieutenant Commander Engineer could just run a bunch of temporal abilities. So that would be a way to work around the forced non-psi seating, but they don't usually change the stats afterwards, and I don't expect that to happen here. So as is, I'm not really impressed with the stats of the bridge officer setup here, and you can make this work. To be clear, you can still make this ship work, but it is not going to be as good as some of the other options out there. Now, for the trait and console, I'll get back to those in a minute, but I want to head over to some ship comparison here. So over on the sortable filterable ship list, which I will have linked in the description down below for those of you that want to check it out, I have all of the science spearheads and the other 4-3 science ships up here. And when it comes to temporal, the only other temporal spearhead right now is the Cheval, which is a promotional ship. Now, with the Cheval, it does have a Lieutenant Commander Universal, whereas the Protostar just has a Lieutenant Universal. So the Cheval has a little bit more flexibility, and the secondary specialization that it does have is Command, which for a Psi platform means you could at least turn it into a Psi Tor platform, which is what myself and others that have the Cheval have done with it. We use it as a Psi Tor platform. But with the Protostar, the seating again is, a bit limited there with that Lieutenant Commander Engineer Miracle Worker. Now, another ship that I would compare this to is the Crossfield Science Spearhead refit, and I think the Crossfield refit is still probably a better science spearhead to go for from a stats point of view, especially when you factor in that it's got a really good trait on it, Universal Designs. But if you look at the Crossfield refit, it has a Lieutenant Commander Universal and a Lieutenant Universal. So it just has more flexibility. And I think if the specializations were swapped on the Protostar, or the Engineer was made a Universal, that either of those two things would help make the ship a bit more competitive against the other science spearheads in the game. But as is, I just really am not that impressed by it. Now, heading over to the console and trait, the console is Reformed Living Construct. This has passives for plus 10 shield power setting, plus 28.5 starship control expertise, and the clicky will make foes within 5 kilometers of you fight each other. So it will take over up to 8 enemies that are near you, and it will confuse them, placate them, and then make them engage in combat with each other. And while they are confused, those foes will also receive a very large damage boost of 170% Cat 2 bonus damage, so that they do more damage to each other. So again, this damage line here, this is to boost the foes that are affected by your confuse, so that they do more damage to the other foes. This is not a damage buff that you get. I don't personally see this as being that viable in most combat situations that I personally go into. A lot of the enemies out there, especially like the board cubes, are typically resistant to some of these types of confuse effects. So I I don't see this having too much actual endgame implications, and I think this will be just more of a fun console to use, but not one that you would want to keep on the build long term. And the Starship trait is Hex Grid Shield Focusing. When you manually redistribute a shield, it will grant you a critical severity buff based on your forward shield capacity, and this buff will last for 30 seconds. This has a cap of 35% crit severity, with you having 60,000 forward shield capacity. The numbers on this are way, way out of touch of reality if they want this to be a trait that people go for. 60,000 shield capacity requires a very, very large investment on your build, and most people are not going to bet, it's going to end up being a loss for you chasing that much shield capacity in most situations. So it's a cool concept, but I think the upper cap is at a way too high threshold, and I think that the amount of crit severity this gives you would probably need to be increased to make this something that people would want to look at. As is, I think it's a very easy pass. I just do not think it is good enough. Now, outside of all of the stats of the ship, there are some other unique things that this ship does. Now, one of them is this really neat effect in sector space. So I'm going to show this to you guys quick. On the Protostar, the quantum slipstream is replaced with the Protostar effect that is seen in the show. And Kale was traveling at like warp 47 or something without most of the buffs on. So it looks like this quantum slipstream on the Protostar is probably going to be the fastest in the game. But it's too soon to say that for sure, so I should be careful saying that. We'll have to wait and see how it actually looks once people have it on hand and try it out in sector space. But again, that doesn't have any combat relevance. That's for just for fun, flying around in sector space, which most people don't even do it nowadays. Most people just transwarp to their target and get there instantly. So that's a fun little gimmick if you wanted to have that visual effect. They've put a lot of work into it. It looks really cool, but doesn't have much, practical end game application. And for the visuals here, Thomas does have a couple pictures up on Twitter, which I'll have linked down below if you want to check them out. I think the Protostar, again, I think it looks really good. The effect in sector space looks really cool, but the stats of the ship overall just are not that impressive to me. So to close things out, I think that the Protostar is mostly a space Barbie ship. The main appeal to the ship is that it's a hero ship from one of the shows, and that it looks pretty cool, especially with that special effect in sector space. But from a performance point of view, the stats are not the best. The bridge officer layout is leaving a lot to be desired. The console and trait are also nothing really that special. And I think for the amount of money that this thing is going to cost, you would be better off picking up something like the Crossfield Science Spearhead refit, or if you're really wanting to go heavy into the side of the game, you might want to wait and just pick up like the Stealing Time Muds bundle and just get the Vern on account-wide unlock. So would I recommend the Protostar? No, unfortunately, I have to say no. I think it's a good looking ship, but it's too costly for what it is stats wise, and the secondary components from it are a bit lackluster in my opinion. So that's my thoughts. Let me know what you guys think. Am I being too negative about the ship? Do you think that the bridge officer setup's not that bad? Do you think that you actually have a build that would be able to maximize and fully benefit from the Starship trait, or do you think that it's out of touch? So, feel free to drop a comment down below and let me know what you think, because my point of view on this stuff sometimes is skewed really far over to like the min-max DPS stuff, and sometimes I get things wrong. So I'm curious to hear what you guys think. That's going to be it though for today. Again, thank you to all channel members and viewers for the continued support. See you guys around.